Greetings everybody, Nitty here with your ticker review for Monday, November 1st. These tickers were requested over the weekend. We've got 5 of them we're going to take a look at. You know me, let's just dive into the nitty gritty here. So we have AABB. This one made a number of big runs back in that February-March OTC bonanza, and it has been pulling back and bottoming out ever since. If we take a look first at some levels, okay, I like to just go to a basic chart with levels and volume, and you can see there is this breakaway gap down the bottom over here from the very beginning of February that has not filled yet. We came awfully close to it down over here and then had a very powerful move up. So whether or not we're going to drop down and actually fill that gap before we continue the bounce is up for the future to tell. I'm not going to try and predict. But if we want to look at the next levels of support, we've got this level over here, just above 10 cents, it looks like, around 10, 11 cents. It found support over here. Then it found support over here again. Let's zoom in, and you'll see it pretty much stayed above this line, 10 cents 61 this entire period. Tempted to break up over here, got pulled back down, tapped it right over here with that daily wick yet again, and then here was that convincing move below. So volume is what you're looking for both breakouts and breakdowns. You can see over here you had 2 healthy volume days in a row, but we stalled out on the price action this second day. So that could have been your first indication that we were not going to continue on. And sure enough, we did get pulled back all the way back down to that support. Same thing over here. We have 2 solid days of volume increase, had a nice gap up and run on this day, and then that was probably the morning, a little pop in the morning, and then another pullback. So when the volume is staying elevated like that for 2 or 3 days in a row, but you're not seeing a continuation in price action, same thing over here, you could argue. You had a volume popping on the way down, 1 nice healthy green volume bar, but then we couldn't get a continuation that next day, okay? So what's happening all the way over here to the right? Well, we had a big volume down through this level of support, which is something I'm always looking for oversold tickets that are down on their support. If they've found support for a very long time, don't always think it's gonna run off that support. Wait for a final drop below that big support, and then you see buying volume start to come in. And sure enough, these last 5-6 days have been a perfect reversal sort of pattern here. You have the red price action sort of leveling out here, curling up, and then 2 solid days with huge increasing volume in a row. But again, you're seeing the same thing that you saw back to the left over there. If we zoom back out again, in both occasions actually, like I said, you had the solid volume, but the pullback, same thing over here, 2 solid volumes, but a high wick pulling back. And you could argue you're seeing a similar thing here. You had a huge day here, that put it on people's scanners, and a huge gap up the next day, but then big pullback. So whether or not that was profit taking from people who loaded down over here, or whether or not that is people dropping bags off, people who loaded back in this area about. And in fact, even though this gap has been filled over there, if we extend the gap all the way to the right, you will see that we are pretty much just got rejected from that zone. So this is a zone of high volume concentration, both from the initial pop right there. This big green volume is all that buying going on right there on that opening day. And then we came down here, we found support off it, so we had another strong buying right over there. Swooped down below it, had some more strong buying through it right over there. You can see the volume, but then dropped down below it, and we're coasting. So people who bought in this area, who thought it was going up, they've been holding this whole time, possibly, okay? They didn't want to take it for a loss. Then when they saw this 2-day run, price got back into this area, they started dropping their bags off. That's a theory, okay? That's not a certainty. I'm not saying that's what is happening. I'm saying it's a complicated lattice work of things that are going on always, but that's certainly something that could be affecting this not being able to break out. So it's got to shake some people out, shake these bags out, and then depending on the due diligence, depending on catalyst, you could see a continuation there. Now, little note, you've got two things going on right now. The DeLarge effect, you might call it, where OTC has been dumping a lot the last week. You also have big boards running big time, crypto running big time. So oftentimes you see this counterbalancing going on with different markets where if these 2 or 3 markets are doing great, this OTC is going to be not doing so great. And also I want to point out that all these ticker analyses that I'm doing, they are not taking into consideration due diligence or catalysts. That's up for you to do the research on and figure out. This is simply taking a look at the technical analysis chart-wise. So now that we know what our support levels are, we got a resistance level up over here around 23 cents, it looks like, where it, swooped under it here, kind of found a little bit of a support underneath it, which was that price gap. But then over here, resistance right there again. So even when we get to the top of this gap over above it, I would expect to see a little resistance around 23 cents. So what you're doing is if you're playing from the bottom, if you're not holding a bag, if you entered here and you're up 50, 60, 100%, you want to start shaving off profits at these resistance zones, okay? Buy at support, sell into strength at resistance. So when you see it stalling out, that's what you might want to be doing. So if we go into the 15-minute chart, you'll see we had a great day, and then it pulled back here to that level of support that we pegged long term, stayed above that, which is good. So you could have bought this pullback there instead of buying the initial pop. That'll put it on your scanner, wait for the pullback. Once you see it holding at that level, volume coming in at the end of the day, that could be a potential curl buy right there. And then when we, boom, got up here and got rejected, and then we, boom, tried to get up there again, still got pulled back, boom, still got pulled back. You could argue there's a little bit of an ascending triangle going on there, but then it broke it at the end of the day. So whether or not this continues on Monday, I couldn't say right now. Right now it's looking a little bit like you had some selling going on, but with a big volume like this on that last 15-minute bar, you are seeing a bit of a battle going on here. This is a fat doji, okay? This isn't decisive one way or the other. Let's just go back to the daily chart now and bring in some more indicators. We've got the MACD, we've got RSI, we've got accumulation distribution. These are some of my favorite indicators. RSI and accumulation distribution are two of my favorite. So let's zoom into the more frequent recent price action. Yeah, I mean, MACD, of course, you have a bullish cross with a huge histo flip because of these 2 green days, but that could be just a pop. It could very easily, like I said, pull back a little bit before having to go. There is this huge gap that was created. It could come back down to that and try and fill a little bit. And yeah, of course, the RSI is rocking it right now, almost already very overbought on the RSI just in 2 days. But like I said, this big wick pushing back down is not the best of indications. Accumulation distribution, you could argue that's, tapping off the bottom right over here, but remember, these are all relative. So if just in theory, this price were to start getting pulled back down again, the accumulation distribution line would get pulled back down and it could go lower than this point. So yeah, right now, this is the lowest point that it's hit in a very long time, but that doesn't mean it can't go lower. So what you want to see is this making a higher low over here, holding higher ground at least, RSI as well, and then continuing from there in theory. Also, another thing you can do is you can always start to zoom in to tighter time frames. You don't want to go too tight. 1 minute, 5 minute are fairly useless long-term kind of things. But on the 4 hour, you can see that this is not as decisive of an upturn on the accumulation distribution. Again, with that big wick getting pushed down and the second half of the day being a red candle, we are kind of sloping back down here on the 4 hour. If you go into the 2 hour, even closer, you just get more points of contact, but you can see it sloping down. So it could start curling up like that. That's ideally what you want to see it hold support around this 13.5, maybe 12.75. But it could pop all the way back down to 11.5, you could argue. And if you see confident buying coming in there around that level, then you might want to take a play. But right now, for me, this is kind of a hold and wait and see what happens with this on Monday. But again, this is knowing nothing about the due diligence. If we go back to the daily real fast with these momentum indicators, stochastic full, that had a nice little, obviously, bullish cross there for these 2 days, but this could easily flatten out like that and start curling down again. You have a big change on the daily TTM squeeze, but again, that's because these drastic bars. So it's difficult with these big drastic bars. They do sort of change these lagging indicators quite quickly, so you can't trust them outright. Again, if you were to zoom in a little bit to another time period, you can still see the same thing happening here, but stochastic full is riding up along the top there in the 4 hours, so that could curl back down as well. The DMI, this green line is the positive, red is the negative. They're at extreme wide distances right now, which sometimes can mean they have to get a little bit closer again first before they can gather some momentum. So could be a little bit of a pullback consolidation before we go to break, because like we have pointed out at the very beginning, we are at a very important resistance area right here, this gap from all this buying that was going on over there. So we got to get through the bag holders, get up above this level, and break the 22-23 cents to really start seeing a move. And when you break that level, it might not be a clear run up. It might be a break, a pullback, and you want to see that become new support. So that's AABB for you in a nutshell. Oh, I also just wanted to point out you have this downward sloping trend line that acted as resistance over here, support over there, resistance over here, support for a hot minute, resistance right after that, resistance right there, resistance over here again, resistance all the way down through here, and then it broke up over that. If we extend this to the right, broke up over that. So if it does pull back even farther than that gap down to this area, you want to see it holding above this downward sloping trend line at least and bounce back up. But you oftentimes see breakouts, pullbacks, and then bounces again. So that is essentially what we're looking for here on AABB. Let's move over to Igex, IGEX, okay. Again, let's just go back to the basic volume profile chart. And yeah, we have, all this consolidation going on down over there. You could argue that there was a bit of an ascending pattern going on there, and then it broke out on huge volume right there. So this big gap down in the bottom, that's all that volume buying right there. So it acted as an attractor, a black hole almost, pulling price back down to it, not filling the gap completely, but pulling it back in and forcing more buying in this area until we had some breakout volume again over there, popping back up. And then when we pulled back, we didn't quite go back down to that same level. So for me, I don't think this gap's going to ever completely fill. I think that anybody who bought down in this very important area, the price held halfway through it, and then you had more big buying right over there over it, and then this was a higher low over here. So I personally don't see it getting back down to that gap. There was another little gap that was created over here after this second pullback. And then we did pull all the way back down to it, but we didn't go into it, okay? We tapped off the top of that gap. So that's another reason why I don't think the bottom gap is gonna fill, because we didn't even come back down to there this second time. So we're making higher low, higher low. We've got more higher lows over here. And then look at this wedge that was happening during that time period. We had a big breakout from that wedge. And then we've had a pullback ever since, and we've been sort of jostling along sideways here between this big range of 0057 about 0085, churning through here. So will we get back down to this gap that was wicked into? Well, we've wicked it, we've tapped it, and this is right at the end of this big breakout. So again, you've got all the people who bought down here, people who bought and held it up over here, people who bought and held it up in this area. They don't want it to drop below here. If it drops below that, they start losing money. Okay, they bought down over here. They want to keep that price up. Look at these huge volume bars over here of people buying in. So then when it got started pulling back over here, you've got profit taking perhaps. That could be profit taking from people who bought back in these lower areas, but it could also be people cutting their losses fast if they bought too late. And now, because it's been churning around in this zone, it's a wide zone, but it is above this last sort of the apex of this wedge that was happening. So I like this to stay above at least this level over here. If you were dip buying this stuff around over here, that's a really good move, I think, on in my opinion. And yeah, we seem to be stuck below this 0084 level, which was acting as resistance on this day. We had, 2 days above it over here, support briefly, but then it pulled back down. And if we go and add our EMA clouds, we're on the daily, you can see these are basically the 9, the 21. I'll show you what I have: 9, 21, 30, 50, 90, 200. So got the red is the 9, the 21, the 30, the 50, the 90, and the 200 all the way on the bottom. And look at this over here when it got pulled back all the way down to the 200, which also happened to coincide with the top of that gap support, okay, which we've been talking about incessantly. And that was also the beginning of sort of this upwards wedging thing that was going on. So hitting your 200 after running up above like that, and then this volume coming in, that would have been a great dip buy right there. And then it held the wedge right there, and then it held the top of the 100 moving average over there as well, and you saw volume coming in. That could have been a good one. So when you see these things holding support, especially around a confluence of support, this was this gap volume support, along with the 200 moving average, along with the lower Bollinger Bands on the daily. When you're seeing 2-3 areas of support all acting together, that's oftentimes a good buy. If we hop back to AABB real fast, we can see also in the downtrend, look how far down this was below all of the averages. So that's another way to play it. When you're so far extended below the major averages, some people like to dip buy severely beaten down, oversold. Some people like to buy on the way up at support, at important support. So this is, pull back to the 200. That's a good buy. Let's go over to the indicators real fast for Igex. And let's zoom in here. And you've got the RSI was a bit overbought on this big run up, pulled back. And we are, it looks like, curling up over here, okay? RSI is still, slightly lower low than back over here. So it's not 100% done deal that I think this is going to continue. Accumulation distribution on the daily is staying pretty tight, pretty solid. Let's go to some other indicators here. So yeah, Stochastic RSI, the red is going to make a bullish cross up. The purple line, I'll go over these in more details in other videos. This you want to see flattening out here on the bottom and also start to curl up. So it might be a little early. You might see this red line pop up, pull back, and then swoop up to give this purple line time to sort of make its turn. Similar to over here, where you see the purple line is downward sloping, the red line was making this bullish cross. So you might say to yourself, okay, this is a bullish move right over here. But look what happened. It got stalled out and it continued to go back down. It needed to give the purple line a little time to flatten and curl up. That's the bullish cross that you would have wanted to play more confidently. You also had the TTM squeeze there going green over here on the daily. So that would have been another indicator. You don't have that happening over here, okay? You have actually the TTM squeeze was heading in the opposite direction, the wrong direction. What's going on over here right now with that? Well, it's kind of just be holding tight over here. It's a little green. It's trying to move to the upside, but whether or not that will be that cross right there or it needs more time, we will have to wait and see. Let's go to a tighter time frame real fast, 2 hour, and you can see what's happening here. Okay, we found support, came up, got rejected from this area, came back down, high or low, so that's a good indication at least. So you could argue, that. I don't know if I would. Either way, high or low over there, but getting rejected from that same 0084, 0085 area. We're hanging up here now still, so you want to watch this to see, is this going to pull back down again? And if it does pull back down again, is it pulling back down to the previous low? Is it going to pull back below that previous low, in which point that'll be your area of support that you're looking for? And yeah, it was resistance here, it was resistance here, support here. So if that does come back down to this area, chart-wise, that's a great buy right there. If this comes down and makes another higher low over here, then you could make a case that this is an ascending pattern that's starting right over there, churning up, gaining momentum to break this 0084, 0085 area. So watch this for more of a pullback, see if it holds this extension of the upwards trend line there, see what's going on price action volume wise, and try not to zoom too far in on your indicators, because you can always zoom into, you can always find a random time frame with indicators that are going to confirm your bias. But when you start going in really tight, these short-term, 5 minute, 15 minutes, those are for day trading, those are for scalping. That's not going to help you in these longer-term kind of swings. But it is interesting that you've had this long-term ascending wedge pattern, ascending triangle pattern kind of happening within another ascending triangle pattern. So to me, this is looking decent to keep on your watch list right now. You may want to play the breakout from that area if and when it does start happening, at which point you're looking to take profit around the penny mark is always a psychological resistance I see on a lot of these tickers. And then above that, all-time high is what you'd be looking for. So not a bad play from here to there, but don't jump into it necessarily. Wait and see if you get a little bit of a pullback and a support. You want to see support come in. So let's go over to the third ticker, PRDL. Okay, let's go back out to our daily, and let's go back to our volume and our levels. So this was pretty much doing nothing down over here. Most of the buying started coming in over this area, popped above this 001, another psychological level, much like the 1 penny. The 001 can oftentimes act as support or resistance, which it did. Popped up over it here, but it was resistance right over there. Then when there was more action coming in on this ticker, that is kind of the level where it was stuck underneath for a while. It was churning, churning, churning. Finally, we have a breakout up to 0014, a pullback, but now we're holding that as new support. So this old resistance of 001 from this area became new support right over here. And then you have more volume coming in over here, driving it above the 0014 all the way to 0025, where you hit another level of resistance. Then we pull all the way back down to the 001. So just because you break one level of resistance once doesn't mean it's going to stay above there. It has to find new support there first, which it didn't on this occasion. Okay, it broke this 0014 was resistance over here, it broke it. It did seemingly find it the same day right there, but then over here a couple days later it was clear it was not holding, churning below it, and then it dropped back down, held the 001 area though. So that would have been a great dip buy right there, saying, well, that was resistance all over here, support real briefly. I'm gonna say that it's not going to drop to be below 001 again. So that's potentially an area where you want to buy, and sure enough, boom, had a big run. Now we broke with this strong volume. Let's zoom in even more. This 0003 now was resistance for 1 day, for 2 days, staying below it over here, but we held the 0025 essentially during that time period as well. So we're churning below between these two levels, and then boom, we had a big breakout on nice volume over here. And then that started a little bit of a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 day run up to 0044. Okay, but then clearly rejected over here, and then we're churning sideways, swooped, bounce, held this trend line, which if we zoom out, you can see from all the way back here in February, tagged it again over here in July, tagged it again over here in September, and now we wanted it to hold that area right over here, okay, because it was holding all through here, but it didn't. And more importantly, it broke that level on big volume, okay? So support and resistance often requires big volume, both to get over and to get back under. So if price is kind of coasting along a level of support and you're not seeing big volume come in, or you're seeing big volume come in, but price action is not reflecting it, okay? Don't necessarily buy the support, okay? The longer it hangs out at support and doesn't pop up off it when you're seeing volume come in, it's sort of like the more chances it has of falling through. So you want to be patient. You don't want to buy Don't assume, oh, it's churning there above support, so I'm going to just wait as long as I can and then buy it because it's going to pop up above. No, if it's not making a confident move above, be patient. Okay, if you do see it start to make a move, yeah, you could try and get in, play some momentum, but you don't want to get in necessarily if it's going to drop below that. You want to, if it does drop below that, then your eyes are always peeled to that next level of support, which in this case was 0025, which that was drawn for a very specific reason back over here, and then over here as well. Again, not only did it find support on these 3 days after, but it broke through that area with big volume. So where big volume is forcing price to break through areas, that can clue you in as to, yes, this was an area of resistance. And now it is an area of support, and it acted as support again over here. So 0025 was a perfect dip buy on PRDL the other day. We're not too far above that right now. I mean, it's only a 15% drop to 0025, which is not a lot in terms of OTC. So you could, for instance, start scaling in around over here if you like this play, if you like the due diligence. If it does drop any lower, you could average down around 0025. But again, there's nothing to say that this can't drop below that. And if it does, we're looking at this 0014 level again. But you could also argue there's a bit of an in-between level, maybe around 0019. So I like to just do a little jagged line. So it held right now, but it didn't make a super confident move. And actually, let's go into the hourly real fast and see. Here we are. We came down. Red bars selling off, and then it held support right over here. Popped right over here on this last day, 15%. Pulled back. We had a buy at the end over here that pulled it up a little bit more. But I'm not seeing this as absolutely confidence with buyers coming in and a definite continuation. This could be a rejection from there back down to 0025. And if it starts churning and hanging out around this level for a couple days, then again, watch for it to possibly break below it. And then big volume comes in and you start to see buying. These tickers act in various ways depending on lots of things. So don't assume that it can't do something that you don't want it to do. Okay, confirmation bias is a terrible thing. So play the chart in front of you, be patient, be okay with missing the first 10 or even 15% of a run. These OTC plays that we're all chasing can go for 50, 60, 80, 100% or more, as we all know. So don't throw away 20, 30% to the downside because you're worried you're going to miss the first 10 or 15% to the upside. Wait for confirmation. And play the chart in front of you, not the chart that you want to see. So we're on daily. Let's hop over to, let's take a look at the EMAs real fast. And you can see yet again, when it came all the way back down here and hit the 200 moving average, that yet again would have been kind of a perfect buy. And it was also coinciding with this previous resistance, which is new support over here. So again, confluence of support. Okay, you've got the vertical support, which was resistance. Okay, this is based on volume. Then you have the 200 moving average acting as support as well. So that was all good indications that this would have been a great buy right there. You also have the psychological 001 level that I was talking about before as well. And so yeah, if you had bought over there, you could have comfortably ran this up for several 100%. So that would have been a great buy. Why didn't anybody tell me back then? Come on, guys, get on this. So yeah, like I said, we're looking for it to hold this support over here, but don't be shocked if it falls below it, especially these days with the penny world. Things are a little chaotic right now, but that's PRDL in a nutshell. But let's take a look at indicators real fast. There we go. We have RSI. This is a great example of RSI diversions back over here. Let's just backtrack to do a quick lesson on that. So we've got the RSI here. Price making slightly lower lows over here, but RSI making slightly higher lows. Okay, so that is that 200 moving average. That is that 001 support. And then in addition, if you had been watching your RSI, you would have seen that divergence happening. And that again would have been a third confirmation for that. Also the MACD you have making this curl up from the bottom during that time period. So that's a fourth indication that that's going the way that you want it to go, back over there, okay? Currently, you still have the MACD in a bit of a downtrend. We have turned dark red here, which means there could be momentum coming to the upside. RSI, big sharp turn, but again, that's because of this big green day. So that could be easily pulled back down like over there. It's better when you have two separate points of interest on the RSI several days apart that give you a longer view of what's going on in the more recent and the more future. Right now we just have this 1 point right over here on support. So you could play the bounce again, but you could wait and see what happens to the right over here. And depending on that, if this price churns to the right, or even better, if this price goes down a little bit from here, drops below 0025, but at the same time, RSI makes a higher low like over here, that would be another divergence in this area. And that's when you'd want to buy that dip right over there. Let's go over to our other set. And again, you've got, similar to that to, I think it was AABB we were looking at, you've got the stochastic RSI on the daily is starting to make a bit of an uptrend here, but there's no bullish cross happening yet. And this purple line can flatten out a little bit. We want to see that curling up a little bit. We also have on the DMI, the green is positive below the negative right now. So that's not the best of signals. But this could easily make a crisscross back that way. But at the same time, this purple line, which again, I'll go into these more in detail on indicator videos, this is downtrending as well, which is not what you really want to see. You want to see positive crossing above the negative, and you want to see this sloping upward. This is a momentum, a line basically on the DMI. Right now, momentum is slowing, okay, which could mean that it's bottoming out here at support. So we want to wait and see what's going to happen here to the right. You also have the daily TTM squeeze is going in the wrong direction that we want. So don't think just because this had a great day, 16% on Friday, that this is a definite bounce. Be patient. It takes time sometimes to really see what's going to happen to these tickers on the right. But all we have to help predict us is what's happened to the left. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at patterns. We're looking for little clues along the way that can hint us into these things. So let's hop over to our 4th out of 5 tickers, DPLS. Okay, so this has been around for a bit, making some waves. I just want to draw one more line over here. And yeah, if we're looking at, we could zoom out a little bit and look more to the left over there. Just want to go back to our basic. So yeah, look at this line that I just drew right there without looking to the left because of the resistance over here. There was a bit of resistance support over there. You can see kind of like a cup going on. There's no handle really, but cupping kind of, and then the breakout. And sure enough, without even looking all the way back over here in 2019, it was resistance over there after it dropped. Now there's nothing going on over here volume-wise, so does that really mean much? Well, apparently it means a little bit because look at those levels held true. But let's just look to the right over here where we're interested in. And a whole bunch of volume in this area playing around, coming up over here, popping up over there. So you could argue that there's another line of resistance right over there as well. Why don't we go ahead and color that purple? And yeah, the color of my lines, my dotted lines, my graphical representation of gaps, all these things are just the way that I do it. You guys should find the methods and the things that work for you. As long as you can read your chart and you can make sense of it, that's what's more important. And what are we looking at now? So, So we were down below this area of, under 5 cents basically for a long time. There's a lot of volume. Back over here below this purple line even. But then this is when the second kind of pop started happening in June, okay? Volume coming in over here, popping up above both of these levels. But then this big red bar on the volume, you can see, pulled it back down to this 0.0475 level. Held as support though, held as support the next day, and then boom, we were off to the races, so to speak. So that is a super important level right over here, 0.0484. We're more than about 100% away from that level right now, where price currently sits, even though we had gone a lot higher than that. So worst case scenario, it could come back down to that level perhaps. But you also have a lot of support up over here, which we can see as volume stayed, steady-ish over here, started to drop, a little bit through this time period, but then came back in over here. this purple line now for me is the real strong support. And you can see it acted as support all through here. All these gaps got filled on the way back down over here, but then it bounced off this little area of support. It did wick below there, almost tagged the gap, but didn't quite. And then buyers came back in, held it up. Same thing, came back down again, double bottom over here, okay? So this is another indication that this is important support. We ran back up, we're pulling back down. We found higher lows over here from this gap area, volume coming in over there, creating a gap, pulled back down into it, but buyers came back in again. But then look what happened. Even though we found new higher support over here after these areas over here, so you could argue, grab that, if you wanted to do something like that, you could argue at that time period that would have been a slightly accurate trend line, you know, higher low, but then as soon as it broke down below that, you would be saying, okay, now I'm looking for the next area of support. And it did come back down to that 7 cent region again, which was major, resistance over here, support over here. This was showing us the promise of higher lows, but no, it didn't hold, possibly because last 2 weeks, there have been big sell-offs in the OTC, so we came down to lower support, and then we did 5 buyers come in over there. But again, look at the big volume here and look up and then down, okay? And again, this could be several things. This could be bag holders getting rid of their bags, people who bought in any of these areas. If they bought this breakout over here, but then it pulled back down and they held on, okay? So they're in the red down over here. People who bought this breakout over here, but then price got pulled back down, okay? They'd be in the red over here as well. People who bought this bounce over here, they would have been in the red in this area as well. So when the price started coming in up over here with the volume, it got stalled out of this area. Well, look at that area. There's not a price gap there, but let's draw a rectangle through that area over there. And sure enough, look, rejected over there, broke through over there, found support over there, broke back over there. So you can see that it's an important level that runs through. It doesn't have to be an exact line somewhere at a very specific level down to a penny, but it's certainly an area that prices had trouble getting over, but also found support at. And this little dump off over here put a lot of people, anybody who bought to the left, all the way back to over here, all the way back into the beginning of July, basically, it put them in the red. So as it came back up, they might have said to themselves, you know what, I'm just going to dump this stock. I don't like what's going on with the OTC right now. I want to get out. And so that's why you had those 2 days in a row after that bounce. It was looking promising, but no, we're coming back down because this is not a good time for the OTC. In theory, like I said, there's lots of things going on, and you should do due diligence and all that jazz and figure out what made this pop. Was it simply support, or was there a news something going on? Let's go to the EMAs. I like EMAs more than simple moving averages. EMAs take the more recent price action more into consideration. And sure enough, boom, look where we are over here. Bottom 200 moving average, okay? 200 EMA, which also coincided with this level of support from over here. So again, buying at the 200 EMA, which also coincides with an important level of support, turns out in this occasion to be a good 1 or 2 day play at least. But even if this pulls back, I would be surprised to see it break this 7 cent level, okay? So if it pulls back to that 7 cent level, that could be where you want to buy, okay? Because if we, again, go back to these other tickers, when it hit this important support, which was also the 200, had a big run. Igex, when it hit this level of support, which was also the 200, it had a pop, a pullback, and then another big run. So DPLS is looking potentially like it is just bouncing off that 200, that level of support that these other tickers did so far in the past, in the past months or whatnot. So potentially DPLS is the best buy on here so far because it's the most bottomed out near support. So watch for this to come back down potentially. Let's go over to our other studies real fast. And you can see RSI was tapping that 30 oversold area. And we had, indicator wise now, it's showing a nice bounce off of it because of this day. But this big wick push down, this red day is tapering that off. So we haven't broke above this level of the RSI. So that's what you want to see. It's, you're looking at relative levels more than just the absolute level itself. Accumulation distribution does look to still be sloping down a little bit. I wouldn't call this a confident move to the upside on that indicator. If we zoom in to a tighter time period, you can see accumulation distribution did a little bounce over here, and now it's coming down. If this starts swooping, if this holds above this 0.0877 level or whatnot, which 1, 2, 3, 4 4-hour candles in a row, it has been holding right over there, that would be a very good indication that we could start seeing more of a move to the upside. But this 0098, we'll just call it 10 cents basically, it's very close to it. That's the level of resistance that we're fighting right now. So right now we're in between these two levels basically, and you have to wait and see what's going to happen. Okay, if we pull up our other indicators real fast, you'll see, very similar somewhat to these other tickers we were looking at. This is the 4-hour now, not the daily, so we're a little more zoomed in. You do have the purple on the stochastic sloping upwards a little bit, but the red is coming down for a bearish cross on the 4-hour so far. Same thing with DMI. You had a big pop over here, so the DMI plus line was very overextended here. Red line was swooping down, so these might have to get closer together before they can bounce and make more of a bullish cross indicator wise. If we go into an even closer time period, you can see rock up, pull back, held support. You want to see more buying coming in there potentially. So I'm not convinced that this is going to go one way or the other right now. That's why we watch. They're watch lists. We watch these things. But if this starts to break up and makes a run for a penny again, you could think about getting in there. If you think this is going to break that or 10 cents rather, if you think this is going to break that 10 cents mark this time, then that would be a potentially really good play. If it does break that level, where are we looking at for potential profit? Or we're looking at the upper resistance levels. This 1184 level is looking like some resistance right over there. Above that, you've got the 1473 about from over there. So those are all levels that you could look to take profit potentially if you do get into it here, anywhere from here down to 0.071, and you want to play this for whatever percentage. So DPLS so far, I would argue, could potentially be one of the better plays right now to get into. But PRDL also sitting at that support. Igex also kind of sitting right around this support. But you want to wait and see on those. AABB, like I said, got pushed down from that second green day. Last but not least, let's look at MJWL. Let's go ahead and load our basic chart. Gets with the volume. So we've got this little run up over here. This was resistance for a while, broke above it big right over here. Huge day the next day, made a gap, came back down, tapped off the top of it right there. So basically all the people who bought over in this area, they didn't want it to drop down over there. Then we had this massive run over here in this stark upwards channel where you had 1, 2, 3, 4 days in a row where it just skyrocketed up to 26 cents. This was in June, not the February-March run. It looks like it should be back in February-March, but it wasn't. It was June. But then what do we have from there? We have a consistent pullback, hit this level of support for a while, but then broke down through it, and then broke down through this level over here. We broke down through this level of support, which was resistance down over here at about 0.077 cents. And then that's sort of where it found its new base. So 0.077 was, you could argue, sort of the support, but it had to dip below it a little bit before it could continue back up. And since then, we've had higher low, higher lows going on right now as well. But not a huge lot of volume coming in over here. So whether or not this is going to continue to curl and get back up to 15 cents, break that, go even further, or whether or not it'll dip back down a little bit. That's also what we're going to be looking for. Let's zoom into the 2-hour real fast, and you can see again sideways action for this last week. Volume not really picking up very much. So when, like I said, when it's churning above these levels of support, this is around a psychological level, underneath a psychological level, we don't want to buy it necessarily because it's holding on decreasing volume. So you could very easily see this drop down below. You've got this trend line that you would look for potential support. And then you've also got that 0078 level around there that you would look at for support as well. So much like all these tickers, really, I mean, it's pretty much going to be every ticker ever I review is going to be a watch this and see what is happening with it. You don't want to buy just because it's at a level. You want to see how it's responding to a level. And right now, it's holding at that level, but it's not being responsive one way or the other. It's not bouncing off it. It's not dropping below it. So be patient as this goes sideways. Let's bring up the EMAs real fast on this chart as well and see what's going on there. So again, look at this. We came back down over here to the bottom of the 200 moving average basically, and it's been bouncing off that. Okay, came down over here, almost getting down to the 200 again, but it's holding, and we're still right below the 100 moving average now as well. So we really do want to see this continue to gain some steam here, curl up, and make more of a definitive move. You could complete speculation. You could say that this right over here might be the beginning of an ascending pattern, or a continuation of it, really, because, you know, higher low, higher low, higher low, you do have this ascending nature kind of going on there, but it hasn't really been able to break above this level over here. So perhaps this comes up a little bit over here, pulls back a little bit more, continues to go up, churns around, builds some strength before it breaks out through there. Could there be a dump down below here? Absolutely. Who knows? I don't know who owns, you know, a lot of these shares. So anything can happen in the OTC. Let's go over to our indicators. We're on the daily again. Yeah, again, RSI is just kind of going sideways. Accumulation distribution sideways. MACD is fairly sideways-ish. You know, not really telling us much one way or the other. We go to our other study set. Yeah, same thing, you know, stochastic. The red is just flatlined here on the bottom, so that could remain sort of skimming along the bottom to give the purple line time to swoop down and then curl up before this continues up. And in that time, to wait for that, this price could drop down a little bit more. DMI is not looking one thing or another right now. They're sort of all curled and bunched up right here, so these lines could break anyway, basically, depending on what the price is doing. These are all lagging indicators, again, so they're just telling you what happened, not what's going to happen. But you can look for patterns as, you know, you scroll back, you see right over here, these lines are all kind of converging. We'll look over here, same thing was kind of going on, and it had a break to the upside. Okay, that would have been a good buy over there. But you can find other examples of the lines all churning together over here, but rather than the price breaking up, the price actually broke down. You know, the negative line moved on top, positive line worked below. The purple had been sloping down, so it continued to slope down, and that's what's happening over here. Purple line is sloping down, so that could continue to slope down. Red negative DMI could pop up, the plus line could pop to the bottom, and this could drip back down a little bit. Right now, like I said, there's no clear indication for me one way or the other, although it is good that it's holding at support over there. Let's go ahead then and just zoom in a little bit to get a little more points of interest here. Why don't we go to the 4 hour? That's the 1 hour, sorry. And you can see here, tighter frame. TTM squeeze is showing a little bit of a move to the upside. But again, these are kind of just going sideways, these other indicators. There's no clear direction one way or the other, in my opinion, as to which way this is really going right now. But it's starting to tease a little bit of an uptrend coming in the future at some time. You do have RSI making slightly higher lows over here, but that is matching up with the price action. Okay, you've got price action making slightly higher lows from there to there. So there's no divergence, it's just following along what the price action is doing. So you don't want to necessarily play those moments. You want to be looking for the divergence moments, like we found on that other ticker. So that is the long and the short of it, guys. I hope these ticker reviews helped you. We've got AABB here. We've got Igex. We've got PRDL. We've got DPLS. And we've got MJWL. Those are our 5 tickers for Monday, November 1st. And be sure and comment down below this video on YouTube and let me know what the 5 tickers are you want to see for tomorrow, Tuesday, November 2nd. I'll do those over the evening and get them up to you to look at for the following day. So that is Nitty signing off, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you all tomorrow.